What is up, everyone? I'm Rusty, your local laboratory maniac. This is Landman EDH, where we talk about EDH deck building and commander cards. Today, I have an exciting video for you. I'm going to be talking about 10 unique mono red decks. Normally, in my videos, I spend about 10 minutes talking about each deck, but in this video, I will be more brief. If you do want me to go into depth on a particular deck in this video, just let me know in the comment section down below. I'd be more happy to include it in one of my long form videos or its own video. Now, without further ado, let's jump into it. So in one of my other videos, I actually said the phrase, if you want to make a deck very unique, do what you're doing, but do it in mono red. And I still think that's true. Sometimes that's not always possible, but it can provide you a unique way to build a deck. And you'll see that throughout this whole video. Now, what can red do pretty well? What are some things red does that we can use to our benefit that other colors cannot provide? Non-combat damage is a huge one. Impulse draw, it's really good at that. It's good at artifact synergy and removal. It's very aggressive and actually it's very combo centric, and you'll see what I mean here in a second. And then it has the major tribes of dragons and goblins. Now, here are the top commanders for mono red from EDH Rec. And I use, obviously, and my whole channel is themed around unique decks. And I hear a lot of people poo poo on EDH Rec, but it's really a good source of information, especially if you're new. Obviously, don't copy and paste, or do copy and paste if you're brand new and new to deck building, but eventually you want to kind of move away from that. So the top five of these, in my opinion, are combo decks. I've faced all of them and they usually win pretty fast. Usually some kind of infinite combo, kind of one-shotting opponents essentially. The bottom are actually, I'm kind of surprised that the bottom are in the top 10, especially Norin. I didn't expect Norin. That's pretty cool. Now, this first deck is going to be real jank. Now, all these decks are kind of jank, but this one in particular, it's Fog, but red. If you've watched any of my videos, you've probably heard me mention Fog and how much I like it. Now, red isn't the color you think when it comes to Fog. You're usually thinking green, white, and sometimes black. However, red does have some options here. So you got Impulsive Maneuvers. It's a 2 generic, 2 red enchantment. When a creature attacks, flip a coin. If you win the flip, the next time that creature would deal damage this turn, it deals double the damage instead. If you lose the flip, the next time that creature would deal combat damage this turn, prevent that. And this is any creature attacking, so your opponent. So sometimes it'll be double. It's such a red effect. It's random, it will fog or it will double damage. However, it's completely random. Now, not all of them are going to be like this, but I just thought this one is what inspired me to make this deck, so I'd include it. Now, Faint is another fog effect in red. It's a 1 red instant. All creatures blocking target attacking creature become tapped. Target attacking creature and all creatures blocking it deal no combat damage. So it's more of an individual fog instead of an all-out fog. And then Fighting Chance is a 1 red instant. For each blocking creature, flip a coin. If you win the flip, that creature deals no combat damage. So if you're swinging in, this can protect your creatures. As I said in the beginning of the video, artifacts are something red does well, and there's a lot of fogging artifacts. You got Al Abra's Carpet. It's a 5 generic artifact. You can pay 5, tap it, prevent all damage that would be dealt to you this turn by attacking creatures without flying. And then Scarecrow does the opposite. It's 5 generic artifact creature. You pay 6 generic, tap it until end of turn. All damage done to you by flying creatures is reduced by 0. Now, Scarecrow is obviously a creature, but if you're facing a dragon deck, Scarecrow's perfect. If you're facing a goblin deck, the carpet's perfect. Now, this next card is a red enchantment, Glacial Crevices. It's 2 generic and a red enchantment. You pay 0, sacrifice a snow-covered mountain. No creatures deal damage in combat this turn. So you essentially just sacrifice a snow-covered mountain, which you're going to have a bunch in this deck because you're mono red, of course. And You just fog for the turn. Obviously, there's a limit to that. You'll eventually run out of lands depending on how much you're getting attacked. Sunstone does something similar. It's a 3 generic artifact. You can pay to sacrifice a snow covered land to have all creatures deal no damage in combat this turn. So it's the same thing, except for it's a colorless artifact. And believe it or not, there's actually a lot of lands that fog. I think there's like 5. You got stuff like Maze of Ith that untaps an attacking creature and prevents all damage dealt to and by it. Then you got Glacial Chasm. As a cumulative upkeep, you pay 2 life. When it comes into play, you sacrifice a land. Creatures you control can't attack, and you prevent all damage that would be dealt to you. Now, this is actually a game changer. So if you don't want to include it, you don't have to. There's other lands that can fog. Most of them are individual, like Maze of Ith, where it picks something to fog. Then you got some cool options in the term of pseudo fog, is what I call it. Eternity Vessels, a 6 generic artifact, enters the battlefield with X charge counters on it, where X is your life total. Which, by the way, that's a cool ability. You can obviously build a whole deck around Eternity Vessel. And then it has a landfall ability. It says whenever a land enters the battlefield under your control, you may have your life total become the number of charge counters on Eternity Vessel. So if you like double the counters on it, you essentially gain more life. It's kind of interesting, but we're using it for the fog. So you're at 40, they do 30 to you. You play a land, you go back to 40. Then you got Platinum Empyrean. It's a 8 mana artifact creature. Your life total can't change, and it's an 8/8. So, okay, you attack me with 100 damage. Okay, I take no damage. And there's even more artifacts that do it. These ones, like Pentagram of the Ages and Horn of Deafening, they actually have to tap mana and tap themselves to target something to prevent it from doing damage. And there's other artifact options. You got Orb of Warding and Urza's Armor that have static abilities that prevent damage. But the options are plentiful for this deck. In terms of a commander for a deck like this, there's obviously no mono red fog legendary creature. You probably want to pick something that has great value, like Clive or Plarg and Narciri. They will give you card advantage, which will fuel your fog. Most turbo fog decks have a lot of Howling Mine effects because they want to keep getting fog abilities. And that's essentially the deck. You fog things mainly using artifacts, but there's like 5 or 6 red fog options, and you just kind of have fun with it. So this next one is a mono red infect deck. I'm calling Phyrexian red. It has Urbas the Hidden as the commander. He's 3 generic, 2 red. He's a legendary creature, Phyrexian Praetor. Creatures you control have haste, and creatures your opponents control come in tapped. And it's a 4/4. So we're going to be using infect creatures. We're going to try to get this guy out so they have haste, and your opponents will have less blockers. And Urbrask is actually the leader of the red Phyrexians, so it's pretty flavorful. Quick lore tidbit: Urbrask is a unique type of Phyrexian. On New Phyrexia, each color evolved in a specific, unique way. Red did their own thing, though, believing that people had to choose to join Phyrexia instead of forcing conversion. Urbrask, who is actually presumed dead now, but that is unknown, he may be alive. He attempted to help others stop the other predators. He believes in freedom and self determination. However, he does believe that Phyrexia is the right way. You just have to choose it. And choose it we do, because Urbrask Heretic Predator can also be one of your commanders. The commander isn't set in stone for this deck, but you can choose this guy. He's 3 generic, 2 red, legendary creature, haste. At the beginning of your upkeep, exile the top card of your library. You may play it this turn, and at the beginning of each opponent's upkeep, the next time they would draw a card this turn, instead they exile the top card of their library. They may play it that turn. So it's a 4/4. So it kind of slows down your opponent's draw, only their first draw on their turn. And one guy you can use that kind of fits this theme pretty well is Homura Human Ascendant. It's a 4 generic, 2 red. He can't block, and if he's put into the graveyard, he returns to play flipped. Now that's different from Transform. In Kamigawa, they actually had a flip ability where at the top there's the starting card that you play, and then you rotate the card so the bottom side is now on the top. And it's a legendary enchantment that essentially gives your creatures +2/+2, and they have flying, and they have the fire breathing ability where you can pay a red to increase their power by 1, and you can do that multiple times, and it goes away at the end of the turn. Now that's going to be really good with Infect because it automatically boosts them, and then you have the option to boost them even more. And as you know, they only need 10 poison counters to lose the game, so one hit can kill. So Red Infect is probably something you're not very familiar with. I've never seen anyone play it. I actually brewed it up a couple years ago. I haven't updated the deck or anything, but it, you got Ogre Minion. It's a 3 generic, 1 red creature ogre. It has Infect, and then you can pay 1 to give it +1/+0 until end of turn. It's a 0 form. So it has that fire breathing ability, which we love. We're going to use that. Then you got Fallen Ferromancer. It's also a 3 generic, 1 red creature human shaman as Infect, and then you can pay 1 generic, 1 red, tap it. It deals 1 damage to target creature or player, and it's on one. So it pings people. And it has Infect, of course. So when it's pinging people, it's giving them poison counters. And of course, since we're in red, we're going to be using a lot of cool artifacts. Grafton Exoskeleton can give something Infect and as a living weapon. And then Plague Mirror is essentially a mana dork with Infect. If you've ever played Modern Infect, for one, it doesn't play red, but it plays normally green, black, and sometimes blue. Now, they use a lot of giant growth effects where you target something to give it a temporary boost, but the benefit is it's a surprise. You don't know what your opponent has. Fire breathing effects are great, but they're also telegraphed often. But you got a lot of instants you can put in this deck, like Lunar Frenzy and Boldavian Rage, which are both X spells that you can temporarily boost your creature, but it's also a surprise. Like Lunar Frenzy is an instant, X and a red. Target creature you control gets +X/+0 and gains first strike and trample until end of turn. That trample is going to be very useful. You got Boldavian Rage, an X and a red instant. Target attacking creature gets +X/+0 until end of turn, and draw a card at the beginning of the next turn's upkeep. Now, what does red do best again? Non-combat damage. And Infect is interesting because they only need 10 damage to kill them if it's done by a creature with Infect, and they have 40 life. So if you get your creature to do non-combat damage, it actually will essentially be quadrupled. So you'll do 10 instead of 40. So Burning Anger is a perfect example. It's a 4 generic, 1 red. It's an aura. It says enchanted creature has tap. This creature deals damage equal to its power to any target. Obviously, the key phrase is this creature. So you attach this to an infect creature, boost it up with some card, and then tap this. You can one shot somebody. Then you got Chandra's Ignition. It's a 3 generic, 2 red sorcery. Target creature you control deals damage equal to its power to each other creature and each opponent. So you boost them up, play this. You can take out some opponents, but remember that creature deals damage to other creatures in the form of -1, -1 counters, not regular damage. So anything it doesn't kill, it'll shrink dramatically. Now, on to the next deck. And like I said, we're going to be moving fast, or at least fast for me. That's subjective. So the next one is a red Enchantress deck. And I know what you're thinking. That's kind of weird, but let's get into it. I'll try to convince you. Annex Hardened in the Forge is the commander, and this is actually a deck I have in paper, and I love, 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 love it. Okay, so it's 1 generic, 2 red, legendary enchantment creature, demigod. His power is equal to your devotion to red, and then when he or another non-token creature you control dies, you get a 1/1 red cedar creature token with this creature can't block, and if a creature has power 4 or greater, create 2 of these tokens instead, and it has 3 toughness. Now, if you go on EDH Track, everyone's building essentially a red aristocrat deck themed around creating those satyr tokens. That is not what this deck is. We want to get as many red pips on the field and just swing in for Voltron damage. Now, quick lore tidbit: Annex first worshipped Iros, but he switched actually to Perforos and embraced the creation and artistry of his god. That's kind of interesting. You could just like switch. It's almost like switching your phone case. Yeah, I feel like a Perforos kind of guy today. Now, he was a king of Akros. His queen was Samid. During the war between the gods, Perforos transformed Annex, reforging him into a demigod who can't think of anything but victory. Nonetheless, he actually repeats a single word, Saimid, which is actually kind of sad. He's just essentially repeating his wife. He misses his wife. The gods are not great people on Theros. They're kind of jerks. Speaking of gods, we're going to play both Perforoses, Porphyri. I don't know what the plural of this guy's name is, but you got God of the Forge and Bronze Blooded. God of the Forge and Bronze Blooded are both legendary enchantment creature gods. They're both indestructible. They're both not creatures unless your devotion to red is 5. And then God of the Forge deals 2 damage whenever you play a creature, or sorry, when a creature enters. And then it has a fire breathing ability for 3. And then a Bronze Blooded gives your creatures haste, and you can pay 3 to essentially cheat out any red creature or artifact creature from your hand, but you have to sacrifice it at the end step. Now, for my deck, I originally went like a more stacksy enchantment route, but then I slowly started going towards aura enchantment. Just getting my creature, my commander, as big as possible, and then benefiting from that. So you're going to use a lot of auras, which have their upsides and downsides. Upsides very powerful. Downsides, if they kill your creature that is enchanted, it's essentially a 2-for-1. You got Thunderous Might, which is a 1 generic, 1 red aura. The enchanted creature, when he attacks, it gets +X/+0 until end of turn, where X is your devotion to red. And then the Brute, which is actually my favorite aura, which is funny, is 1 generic, 1 red enchant aura. Target creature gains +1/+0, and then you can pay 3 red to regenerate them. And just look at that art. That art is just fantastic. Now, if ores are too risky, because losing your commander and all the ores that you worked for in one shot is a risky thing to do, you can do what I call Super Voltron, where your goal is still Voltron, but you have static abilities that are boosting it instead of equipments or enchantments. You got Tavern Brawler and Captive Flame. Tavern Brawler is an enchantment, so these give you pips, which is what you want to boost the power automatically of your commander. Tavern Brawler has an impulse effect and it boosts. And then you got Captive Flame that gives everything essentially fire breathing. So you can actually use this to boost your opponent's creatures as well. Like I said, I actually started with the stacks route, and I have a few stacks cards. Like I have Anzurin Ruins, which is a 2 generic, 2 red enchantment. When it comes into play, you choose a creature type. Creatures of the chosen type don't untap during their controller's untap step. And then I have Smoke, which is a 2 red enchantment. Each player can only untap 1 creature during their untap phase. Now, I kind of went down on them because I'm not a huge stacks player, but if that's your thing, you can easily, there's so many cards that you can put in here that do stacks abilities to slow down your opponents. And believe it or not, there are red cards that care about enchantments. Storm Herald is another reason I went Aura. So it's 2 generic, 1 red. It's a creature, has haste, and when it enters the battlefield, you return any number of Aura cards from your graveyard to the battlefield attached to creatures you control. Exile those auras at the beginning of the next end step. If those auras would leave the battlefield, exile them instead of putting them anywhere else. It's a 3/2. So, I like Graveyard Recursion. This is a red enchantment graveyard recursion spell. So you can one-shot your opponent, hopefully. Now, Crystal Chimes is a 3 generic artifact. You pay 3, tap it, sacrifice it, return all enchantment cards from your graveyard to your hand. And of course, you can play cards to get this back eventually. But yeah, it's also mass recursion that you can play in a red deck for enchantments. And that's essentially the deck. You want to boost your commander as much, get Voltron damage in, and kind of slow your opponents down with enchantments, getting as many pips as you can in. Now, this next deck is actually a Landfall deck, but in red. It's another deck I actually have in paper. You got Thimbercod, which is, I call him the Diabetic Dragon. He's a 4 generic, 3 red legendary creature dragon, has trample, and when he enters the battlefield, he deals X damage to each other creature without flying in each player, where X is the number of mountains you control. You may exert him when he attacks. If you do, he gains flying until end of turn, and he's a 5/5. Now, obviously, this is doing the burn damage thing. It's caring about mountains, and it can fly by exerting. And a quick lore tidbit about this guy, he is a morbidly obese dragon in Dungeons and Dragons Forgotten Realms. He was actually featured in the D&D movie made by Hasbro, which his card is actually from the secret layer that they made for that movie. And that movie was pretty good. If you haven't seen it, check it out. It's one of the you'd think Hasbro making a movie would be garbage, but they actually did really good with it. I was happy with it. Then you got Thimmercod. He can't actually walk effectively, and sometimes he can fly to exert himself. He is very intelligent, but consumed by eating. And when I first made this deck, I noticed there are actually a lot of red landfall cards. And now a lot of these will do damage to like a Chrome Hellkite. It does damage if you play land, and it does even more damage if that land is a mountain. Then you got Nesting Dragon, who makes dragon tokens every time you play land. So you play land, you make an egg token, and then when that dies, you get a 2/2 dragon token with fire breathing. So you can actually go a sub theme of dragons here if you want. Now, flying is going to be a weakness if your opponents have it because you want to board wipe all your opponent's creatures. Yeah, he does damage when he comes into play to your opponent's life, but he also does it to all their non flying creatures. So, something like Earthbind that enchants a creature and removes flying, or Gravity Sphere that just blanket gets rid of all flying abilities will be perfect. And then you could still exert your commander uh, if you have gravity bind or sorry gravity sphere out and you exert your commander, he will still gain flying, I believe. Red has a lot of cool ways, like, mostly an artifact, but not always, of ramping. So Solemn Simulacrum, Sad Robot, is a card I actually really don't like. I probably have almost 50 decks and I play it maybe in two. I just don't think it's effective. But in this deck, it will be effective. Comes into play, you essentially ramp it growth, and then when it dies, you draw the card, and we will be killing it with our commander when it comes into play because it doesn't have flying. Then you got something like Witch's Clinic, which is the only way that I'm aware of to instant speed give something lifelink. You can pay to tap it, target commander gains lifelink. So you play your Thimberclad. Let's just say you have 5, 6 mountains in play. You're doing 5 or 6 damage to each opponent and each creature. If that thing has lifelink, you're going to be gaining 100 life easy. This next deck is a red blink deck. ETB abilities have gotten in the last 5 years so powerful that you could probably make a blink deck in any color you want, probably even colorless. Now, Dong Zhu the Tyrant will be our commander, and this is actually a deck I have seen someone play before. There's a guy named Doodle on a Discord I'm in that has a Dong deck. Everyone's always going on about his Dong. So I was just seeing what it's like. Okay, that's going to be the only inappropriate jokes I make about it. I'm a professional laboratory maniac, okay? No more Dong jokes. Okay. When he comes into play, you choose an opponent's creature, and that creature deals damage equal to its power to that player, which we're going to be using a lot. Now, believe it or not, Dong has a backstory. Portal 3 Kingdoms actually had a storyline, which I did not know. And I will be doing a video at some point about it, probably, because I'm going from set to set with my lore videos. So, in the year 189, he seized power and he actually placed an 8-year-old named Zan of Hun on the throne. Cao Cao attempted to assassinate Dong with a jeweled lotus, and then in the year 192, Lu Bu kills Dong. There are a couple ways in artifacts to blink your commander. You got Conjurer's Closet that blinks it at the end step, and Voyager's Staff that will blink it and return it to you at the end step. Now, these I've actually talked about a few times, so I'm not going to go any more into them, but they're really effective ways to blink or even sometimes protect your commander. And these are actually cards I went over in my Clive deck, which was also ETB kind of themed. Red is really good at temporary cloning something. Electro Duplicate and Twin Flame both clone something. Uh, the thing is, Dong is legendary. Doodle's Dong is legendary. Dang it, I said I wasn't going to make another joke. But it's legendary, and that means you'd have to sacrifice it, but you still get the ETB trigger, which is what we want. So this is almost like pseudo blinking. And obviously, Clive would be great in this deck because we're doing the blinking thing. And he's honestly one of my favorite Final Fantasy characters that they made for this set. I'm not a big Final Fantasy guy, but he's one of the best mono red commanders I've seen in a while, just because of his draw power. So obviously you want to boost your opponent's stuff and you want to boost them a lot. That way they get more non-combat damage from your ETB trigger. Claws of Valakut and Granite Grip both care about how many mountains you control, and they give your creature +1/+0 for each mountain you control. But you obviously will enchant your opponent's stuff, so they will be boosted by your stuff. Now, you can also play this in the Thimberclaw deck if you want because it cares about mountains. You can also play it in the Annex deck because that cares about enchantments and boosting Annex. There's a lot of overlap here, but each has its own strategy. This one, you're boosting your opponent's stuff, which is a unique strategy. Normally, definitely unique in mono red. This next deck is actually another deck that I have in paper. I think I have 3 mono red decks. It's just always fun to build around. It's a Super Friends in red. It is a Chandra theme, so I tried to stick. I'm not exclusively Chandra cards in this deck, but I tried to stick pretty close to as many as I can to make it playable. Chandra Legacy of Fire is actually a Chandra that came out recently that cares about planeswalkers. It's not the commander, obviously, but it's still a pretty good card. It's a 4 generic, 1 red legendary planeswalker. At the beginning of end step, it deals X damage to each opponent, where X is the number of planeswalkers you control. You can +1 to get a red mana for each planeswalker you control. You can pay 0 or remove a Lordy counter from each of any number of permanents you control. Exile that many cards from the top of your library. You may play them this turn. It's a 3. So it's burning, it's mana ramping, and it's impulse drawing. It's an amazing card. Now, this is actually kind of controversial. In the storyline, Chandra, who was on the Gatewatch along with Nissa, used a fireball to defeat the Eldrazi, essentially, or 2 Eldrazi Titans. Essentially, Nissa mana ramped her into a giant fireball. It's kind of, you're like, oh, these Eldrazi are this huge planar threat. Oh, fireball kills them. I don't know. But um, that is kind of the theme of this deck. I'm essentially trying to mana ramp into a giant fireball. Now, the commander is Nahib the Eternal. He's a 3 generic, 2 red legendary creature, zombie minotaur warrior. He has Inflict 3, and at the beginning of your post combat main phase, you add a red mana for each 1 life your opponents have lost this turn, and he's a 4/6. It's obviously used to mana ramp, so we're going to have a lot of Chandras. There's actually 21. I think we have a few more Planeswalkers as well, but it's going to be mainly Chandras. There's 21 playable ones. One starts out as a creature, then flips. And then there's one that's not playable that was only for Wizard of the Coast employees that makes gremlin tokens. It's kind of weird. I wish I had one. I would totally play it. But Chandras all deal damage. They are essentially going to be a toolkit. Like Chandra, Torch of Defiance will draw and mana ramp you. Chandra, Awaken Inferno will board wipe and burn. So they all do something you want to do. They do it a little slower because they're planeswalkers and can only do it at sorcery speed, and they can be attacked and destroyed. But they just do so much in terms of value. How cute you want to get with this deck is up to you. There's a lot of cards referencing Chandra. I think I went to Scryfall and looked, and there's 109 cards referencing her, either in the name, flavor text, and there's probably even more just with her in the art. So you got Chandra's Ember Cat that taps for mana, and then Chandra's Regulator that can copy your Chandra Planeswalker loyalty abilities if you pay 1. Curl Keep Disciples is another Chandra Planeswalker card. It will do 1 damage every time you activate a loyalty ability, and then All Will Be One is such a good card in a Planeswalker deck, especially ours, because every time a loyalty counter goes on a Planeswalker, so when it comes into play with them or you plus them, it'll do damage. And remember, both these cards do damage. Both of these will increase our mana if we have Nahib out, which will increase our fireball size, and we'll mana ramp even if Nissa is not in here. And speaking of fireballs, you're going to want to play, I would say, minimum 5, probably between 5 and 10, because you want to make sure you draw it. So when you're mana ramping with Nahib, you have something to finish your opponents. And you want to finish multiple opponents if you can. Jaya's Molting Inferno is an X2 red. It's a legendary sorcery, so you need a legendary creature or planeswalker out. It deals X damage to up to 3 targets. So if you can somehow get 42 mana, you can essentially kill each of your opponents. And then Fall of the Titans is actually what I talked about in the lore bit. It is the fireball spell that Chandra used to destroy the Titans. It's an XX red, but you can pay X and red. It is an instant. You can surge cost to X and red. It says it deals X damage to each of up to 2 target creatures or players. So you can take out essentially 2 players at once if you have enough mana. Now, this one is just as ambitious as probably the Fog one. It's definitely niche. It's a life gain, but in red. So, there's a lot of artifact spells that gain you life. Dragon's Claw is a perfect example. Whenever a player casts a red spell, you gain a life. There's a couple like that. Now, there's also going to be a lot of good equipments like Shadow Spear and Luxodon Warhammer. They give the equipped creature lifelink and trample and a few other abilities. And there's I think around 12 that do this. So if you have all 12 in your deck, you be gaining a lot of life. And red does artifacts well, but it also does equipments pretty good too. So what kind of creatures are you going to want in this deck? You could go the pinger route. So creatures that tap to do damage. Spear Skewer is one. It's a red creature, Goblin Warrior. As defender, you can tap it. Spear deals 1 damage to each player. And then you got Goblin Artillery. It's a 1 generic, 2 red creature, Goblin Warrior. You can tap it, it deals 2 damage to target creature or player and 3 damage to you. So it'll do 5 damage, you'll gain 5 life, but take 3, so you actually gain 2 life. And then deal 2 damage to something. So that's great. You can equip one of these with a lifelink account, and just go to town. And if you don't go the pinger route, you don't have to. Heartless Hidetsugu is a really good legendary creature that you could have as your commander. If you give him lifelink, it's really amazing. He's a 3 generic 2 red. He's an ogre shaman. You can tap him to deal damage to each player equal to half that player's total life rounded down. And it's a 4/3. So it can easily do 60 damage at once. You gain 60 life. So your opponent's half their life, and you, almost more than double your life. Then you got Edian of the Great Revel. Now, these kind of abilities, you can stack your whole deck with them. There's so many nowadays. He's a 2 red enchantment creature spirit. When a player casts a spell with CMC 3 or less, he deals 2 damage to that player, and it's a 2/2. You can do a lot of the group slug effects, give them life link, so every time they're playing something, they're taking damage and you're gaining life. Another card like Idion of the Revels is Pyrostatic Pillar. Does the exact same thing, except for it's not a creature. So you won't be able to gain life from it, but there's still a lot of abilities that do this. That way, since you gain life, you can kind of pillow fort yourself from that damage. Descent into Avernus is another one that deals damage every turn, but this also mana ramps people, so you gotta watch out. But it can go from 2 damage to 4 damage to 6 damage to 8 damage and so on. Not a lot of people are going to want to get rid of this until they're about to die, and that's when we'll use a lot of our static abilities to do damage. And you could play some generic life gain benefit like Will of Lost Streams. Whenever you gain life, you pay X, where X is the number of life you gain, and you draw that many cards. Perfect in this deck. And whatever you want for your commander, you can do. Like Heartless Hitazuku would be great to give lifelink. Then you got Rogak and Cadiz. They both would be great examples of a commander you can play. It's whatever you prefer. Essentially, just the deck is to gain life. Whatever commander you can choose, you can do stuff like Witch's Clinic, which I talked about earlier, to give your commander lifelink. This next one is actually unique no matter what color scheme you use. I've seen a Hellbent deck in the wild essentially two times. The second time I saw it, I was like, you know what? I actually kind of want to build around that. And I have a Rakdos Hellbent deck. It's so much fun. So this one, mono red, obviously, Hazaret the Fervent is the commander. It's a 3 generic, 1 red legendary creature god, indestructible in haste. It can attack or block unless you have 1 or fewer cards in hand. You can pay 2 in a red, discard a card. It deals 2 damage to each opponent, and it's a 5/4. So it's doing the damage thing, but it cares about your hand size. And there are plenty of ways in red. Even the best ways are actually in red of discarding your hand. Quick lore tidbit about Hazaret. She is a jackal headed Amaketi god of zeal. She was responsible for the final trial and slaughtered the winner with her spear, rewarding them with the god Pharaoh's presence. Obviously, we turned out all that was a lie and put in by Bolus. Then, after the Hour of Devastation, she became known as the God Survivor. All the other gods were killed by Bolas. If you don't know Amonkhet, it is such a good story. Check it out if you can. I'll eventually be doing a video about it. So we're going to be wanting to discard cards to get our hand size small. There's plenty of cards to do that. And there's plenty of discard theme cards in red. You got Browlin Sky Shark Rider. It deals damage and gets boosted with counters every time you discard. However, this guy is usually done with like looting effects. We're not doing looting. That's not what we're doing here. But then you got stuff like Bag of Holding. It's a 1 generic artifact. When you discard a card, you exile that card from your graveyard. So it does go to the graveyard. You can pay 2, tap it, draw a card, then discard a card, which is the looting effect, but we're not focused on that. We just want to discard our whole hand. You can pay 4, tap it, sacrifice it, return all cards exiled with Bag of Holding to their owner's hand. So as you're discarding, and you'll be discarding a lot, uh, you'll eventually get all of that back and hopefully have a really big turn. So, how are we discarding our hand? You got stuff like Curse of Obsession and Avaricious Dragon. Both will draw you additional cards at your draw step, but both make you discard at the end step. So, Curse of Obsession, 4 generic, 1 red, enchantment curse. And first of all, Curse of Obsession, we all have it for Magic. You enchant a player, and like I said, they draw 2 additional cards, and then at the enchanted player's end step, they discard their hand. Avaricious Dragon is a 2 generic, 2 red dragon. As flying, at the beginning of your draw step, you draw an additional card, so only gets you 1. And then at the beginning of your end step, you discard your hand. So if you have both of these, you discard the same, at the end step no matter what, but then you draw 3 extra per turn. And in red, there's like 20 abilities just like this. So you will be drawing so many cards. So your hand will be nothing during your opponent's turn, but then during your turn, you're drawing like 50 cards. Not really 50, but you get what I'm saying. Here's another example, Girapur Ori. It's a 4 generic artifact. You can play an additional land on each of your turn. If you're trying to get your hand size small the natural way, lands clog it up a lot. So playing an additional one is good. This isn't a symmetrical effect, so your opponents will get it, but still. At the beginning of each player's upkeep, if that player has no cards in hand, they draw 3 cards. So if you have this in the dragon out, you're drawing 4 extra cards during your turn. Amazing. And then a perk of not having a hand is things that make it so you can't cast things from your hand aren't really effective. So Experimental Frenzy is a 3 generic, 1 red enchantment. You may look at the top card of your library at any time. You may play the top card of your library, and then you can't play cards from your hand, and then you can pay 4 to destroy it. So that downside isn't as relevant unless we have a bunch of cards in hand. Now, this next deck is a Polymorph deck, and it's actually a lore-based deck. I got it from a guy on Reddit. I forget his name, But he had an interesting Kobold Polymorph deck. We got the commander. It's Rosgnuk, Hair of Raga, and I could have pronounced all that wrong because it's made up words. It's a legendary creature, Kobold Warrior, has Battle Cry, and has Heroic. Whenever you cast a spell that targets it, create a 0/1 red Kobold creature token named Cabals of Cure Keep, which is actually a card you can get. Cabals of Cure Keep. It's a 0/1. So Cabals, if you don't know, they live on Dominaria at Kier Keep. They worship the dragon Prush and believe that through violence will be reborn as a dragon in the next life. That is what we will be doing in this deck, turning our Cabals by sacrificing them and making them dragons. In terms of polymorph, red's actually probably the second best at doing it, blue being the best. Transmorgify is a 3 generic, 1 red sorcery. Exile target creature. That creature's controller reveals cards from the top of their library until they reveal a creature card. That player puts that card onto the battlefield and shuffles the rest into their library. And just forewarning you, this does fizzle if they destroy the card you're targeting. And then Chaotic Transformation is a 5 generic, 1 red sorcery. Exile up to 1 target artifact, up to 1 target creature, up to 1 target enchantment, up to 1 target planeswalker, and up to 1 target land. For each permanent exiled this way, its controller reveals cards from the top of their library until they reveal a card that shares a card type with it, puts that card on the battlefield, and shuffles. So you can polymorph a lot of cards with this if you want, including your opponent's stuff. Our commander has the heroic ability, so we're going to want to target it a lot to make combos to sacrifice. Surge of Zeal is a 1 red instant. Target creature in each other creature that shares a color with it gains haste. So this can give our dragons and other Cabals haste. And then you got Fist of Flames, the 1 generic 1 red instant. Draw the card. Until end of turn, target creature gains trample and gets +1/+0 for each card drawn this turn. So you want to play a lot of cantrip effects too. Cheap cantrip effects in red are pretty easy to come by. And we're polymorphing into dragons. Of course, you don't have to do dragons. In the lore, that's what they believe they'll turn into dragons. And I just want their little dreams to come true. But if you want to polymorph into Eldrazi, you can totally do that. So here are two examples. You got Balefire Dragon. It is a board wipe 6/6 dragon. And then you got Utvera Hellkite. It makes 6/6 dragons when you attack with a dragon. So these are essentially boss monster dragons. And of course, there's many others that you can polymorph into. You can put as few or as many as you want. If you just want Utvera Hellkite and Balefire Dragon, just use these two and then keep recycling them back into the deck, and that way you polymorph multiple times into them. Now, this next one I talk in more in depth in my video. This is what actually inspired me to make this video. It is a Eldrazi red deck, which is definitely not the color combination you normally see with Eldrazi. You got Hairgas, Erupting Nullkite. It's a 9 generic legendary creature, Eldrazi Dragon. Has a merge for 6 generic in 2 red. When you cast this spell, you may exile your hand. If you do, draw 3 as flying, and then each creature spell you cast has a merge. The merge cost is equal to its mana cost, and it's a 6/6. So a merge is a great ability. You sacrifice a creature to kind of pay for that emerge cost, minusing its mana value from the emerge cost. And that makes it so Eldrazi, which have essentially generic mana typically, very easy to cast. You play one, sacrifice it, play another, sacrifice it, play another. And funny enough, Hairgast is actually presumed to be a spawn of Emrakul. It's a dragon that got tainted by Emrakul and now is an Eldrazi dragon. And you can kind of go the dragon route if you want. Hairgast usually is not a dragon commander either. So you obviously want to play large titans like Emrakul and Ulamog, and then you want to face a mono red planeswalker deck to see if their Chandra can really take on these titans. Who knows? But the Titans always have amazing abilities. There's two of each, or now is it three of? There's three of each, I think. 8 of them are playable, so you can just throw all 8 in here because the original Emrakul is not playable. But And then you can just wreck face with, and that could be your win con right there. An alternative win con could be flinging things to your opponent. Barrage Tyrant is a 4 generic 1 red Eldrazi as the Void. You can pay 2 in a red, sacrifice another colorless creature. Barrage Tyrant deals damage equal to that sacrifice power to target creature or player. And it's a 5/3. So, okay, you have a Emrakul out. What's it, 12, 12, 13, 13? Go ahead, throw it at your opponent's face. Then you got Screamer Killer, and there's a lot of effects kind of like this. It's 4 generic, 1 red, Tyrannid as trample, and whenever you cast a creature spell with mana value 5 or greater, Screamer Killer deals 5 damage to any target, and it's a 5/5. So you're casting multiple Eldrazi in a turn because you're sacrificing to reduce cost to play another. You'd be doing 10, 15, 20 damage easy. And since you're emerging and when that causes sacrificing, you can do like theft effects like act of treason, steal your opponent's stuff, sacrifice them to cast your big things. Then you want to throw obviously Echo of Eternities in here. It's a 3 generic, 3 colorless Kindred enchantment Eldrazi. If a triggered ability of a colorless spell you control or another colorless permanent you control triggers, that ability triggers an additional time. Whenever you cast a colorless spell, copy it. You may choose new targets for the copy, and if it's a copy of a permanent, it comes in as a token. This is good in any artifact deck, of course, but in our deck, it'll copy all Eldrazi, it'll copy the triggers as well, which will give us more damage, and it'll keep going like that. And those are the 10 unique mono red commander decks that I've thought about. You know, these decks definitely some are more plausible than others in terms of competitiveness, but that's not what this video is about. It's about building jank. Trying to get something that's normally not done in red to be done in red. I think out of all of them that I kind of want to build is the Fog red deck. No one will expect it, and you know how much I love Fog. Now, are any of these decks interesting to you? Just comment down below. If you made it to the end of this video, I appreciate it. You're a trooper. You're clearly a lover of jank decks. If you do love jank decks and you possibly are interested in Magic lore, go ahead, hit that like button and subscribe for more videos like this. If you have a color you want me to focus on to make a 10 deck idea video, kind of like I did here, comment that also down below. And I appreciate you for watching. Thank you, everybody.